Ethically, well, I think we need to always be conscious of other people, that we're not in this world alone, and we need to abide by our own, by the laws, obviously, but I also think we need to abide by our own morals and what is right, do the right thing all the time, kind of be conscious of that.
I think that to live ethically, you have to think about how you yourself want to be treated by others, and before you treat someone, think about that and make sure that you're talking to and treating people in the way that you would like to be treated in return. If you have a clear conscience, then you're living ethically. If you do the best you can and you know that, and then you have no regrets about that, then you're living ethically. And think about the good for all and not just yourself.
I believe we should live ethically by making decisions based not only on our wants and needs, but the wants and needs of other people and living things. So like for the whole global community instead of just us.
I think it varies depending on where and kind of how you grew up. So I think parents initially have the most influence as far as just like kind of saying how you should live, because that's your main point of influence. And then once you kind of get a big group of friends, depending on their upbringing, where you are and where they are at life, and then media, I mean, has so much influence after that as well.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind in terms of how society tells us to live is through our environment. And again, looking at it from a psychological point of view, this idea of nature nurture. Are we getting our beliefs and our ethics because of what we're born with or because of our environment? And the first thing I think of is our environment. So obviously social media, movies, TV, music, whatever's being said and done in those mediums, then we have this tendency to automatically take on. So whether it's how we dress, how we speak, how we interact with people, and even Albert Bandura proved to us through that experiment of the Bobo doll that we will imitate and observe and take on other people's, not only their beliefs, but their actions by observing and the shaping of our own behavior, which also then turns into our beliefs and our ethics.
Well, that's a little bit more tricky because, society will jade you. It's a tough world out there, I'm not going to lie. I mean, we're sheltered here at school because, we have a principal and assistant principals, who are essentially protecting us from the cruel realities of the world. But once you hit that real world, it's a little bit different. There's nobody really there to protect you, so you sort of get jaded and a little bit more defensive. So what happens is, in my opinion, is that society is sort of steering you in a way where you sort of have to be on your guard, on top of your game a little bit more than it is in a school setting where it's a little bit safer and people are looking out for you. You have to look out for yourself.
I think there's kind of a double standard sometimes where we're told one way but shown another way by others' action.
I think society has a really interesting way of putting constraints onto people and putting ideas into their heads about success and what's important. We're constantly bombarded with instant gratification. I want this now. If I make a lot of money, everything's great. If I look a certain way, everything's going to be great. If I do this, I'm cool. If I don't do this, I'm not cool. And I think that can be harmful in some ways, especially if you cannot tell the difference between simplifying through that and getting to the bottom of the truth and not being able to do that.
I think we don't follow our own moral ethics. I think we kind of, because society doesn't really stay strict to it, as far as other people, we don't necessarily stay strict to it.
It's different from person to person. I mean, I feel like some people, they try to live that, perfect media life of fame, rich, and fortune, and which is the same as riches, but whatever. But never get to it because they're super lazy. Others kind of care less about it, and they're, they turn a blind eye to what should be by kind of the media, and they just make their own path and live happily regardless of what they end up doing?
Selfishly. I think society has us act selfishly, making sure that our happiness comes first and following those trends so that we don't necessarily stand out.
I think it ties everything all together in terms of we are very much influenced by society in terms of social media, TV, music, movies, what's in, what's not in. We're also very much influenced by our parents and the way we're brought up. Again, that looks at our nature, our environment. What are their morals and ethics, and how have they taught that to us? And maybe even tying in religion, depending on a person's religious beliefs. That could definitely have an influence on the way one behaves and believes and acts.
I think it forces you into those norms. I mean, they're norms for a reason, they're stereotypes for a reason, because the majority of the people end up doing it. So I think it kind of just forces us into that norm, at least in and out of it throughout our lives. And some people stay right in it, some people stay right out, but I think the vast majority of people just get right into it and glide.
I think we need to be an example for other people and to show them how you live ethically and not follow along with crowds.
To rail against living selfishly, to make conscious decisions, and to be the best version of ourselves that we're capable of being in order to make society better and to kind of counteract those selfish claims.
To be human to each other, I think that, and to mind our own business. You know, what I do at my home and my stuff, as long as I'm abiding by society's laws and rules, that it's none of your business what I'm doing. They're going back to what I said, therefore don't post your stuff, and you know, so that we can live a life of, you know, what's important, family, friends, you know, our own personal successes. That I think that technically our duty to society is to start, if we're going to post, if we're going to use this technology, then use it for good. If we're going to use all these things, then use it for good. If, you know, I think one of the things I noticed is that, you know, think about the lottery, and it's like $1.5 billion. You know, if that money were spent on, if people are willing to spend $100 in a pool to buy lottery tickets, but they're not willing to raise their taxes to help the poverty, so we stop having this, you know, this black and white of the really rich and the really poor. Like, we're losing our middle class. So I think that, you know, because it's a kind of a serve all. So I think if people were learning to be human and to, one of my favorite quotes is from, I'm going to misquote it, but one of my favorite quotes is from my favorite book, which is To Kill a Mockingbird, which is, you know, you got to walk a mile in a man's skin to get to know him a little bit better, understand where he's coming from. I think if we lived our life a little bit more like that, then we would be more inclined to help each other. You know, and more inclined to not judge each other for all those other things. And so, because I think, like, if you're gonna spend $100 on a lottery ticket, but you won't raise your taxes for education, for things that are really important, that really actually promote society in a good way. So.
Well, I would love to, you know, give you the politically correct answer, say you have to, you know, serve society, but it's just not real. Your first duty, you know, is to yourself. You have got to take care of yourself, whether it's educating yourself so you're prepared for the future. And then I would say your next responsibility is to your family. You know, you want to take care of your family. You know, and then after that, you know, you want to be a kind, good person to people that you interact with in society. But it'd be very correct for me to say, you know, you have your responsibilities to society, and you do, but that's not the first. You know, your responsibility, what you owe yourself is first family, and then society.